Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Shagir, and I'm an epic fantasy writer. Welcome to Across the Realms, a series where I will be having epic one-on-one conversations with other fantasy authors. I encourage you to check out my other videos related to my own writing and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so to stay tuned for my book releases and other epic fantasy content. There will also be a link in the description to my website should you want further information about me and about my books. In this episode of Across the Realms, I will be joined by Peter J. Aldin, a friend of mine and a talented storyteller. Pete is the author of the Envoys science fiction universe, the Doomsday's Child Zompoc series, and other standalone novels that cover a broad range of genres. Breaking into the fantasy genre, Pete's most recent novel is Last Among Equals, a fantasy story that I greatly enjoyed. In Last Among Equals, as monstrous hordes of Trell carve bloody swaths across the southern nation of Olage, northern Cardalon quietly revels in their neighbor's downfall. Until the Trell appear at their Cardelian border. Now, Eric Hodegal, a shunned nobleman bearing his father's sins, must forge an unlikely alliance with an inexperienced Olajan apprentice who hides a secret calling she feels ill-prepared to fulfill. Together, with a ragtag band of soldiers and other outcasts, this diverse group must face an enemy who raises the very dead to serve their armies. In a world where old grudges run deep and new horrors emerge, they must learn to trust each other, or else bear witness to the destruction of both their homelands. I very much enjoyed reading Last Among Equals, and I hope you will too. Links to Pete's website and social media can be found in the description below. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Peter J. Aldin. All right. Hello, Pete.
Alex, good to connect.
Yeah, I'm glad that it worked out since you hail from the land of Australia, a good distance away. It's funny because the time zone, I think of, it's pretty easy for me to coordinate like West Coast, Central Time in the U.S., but then when we're trying to coordinate Australia time, my brain just kind of breaks a little bit.
It makes no sense because we live in tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I told my wife. She said, "Oh, Australia." I said, "Yeah, he's in the future. He's tomorrow. We'll be there at some point."
In fact, I actually had this down in my calendar for tomorrow, my time. But
Gotcha.
because it's happened before, and we've got it wrong.
Right.
Because even the websites that kind of compare times and dates get it wrong, or they don't look right. I left.
Yeah, yeah.
I left
Absolutely.
today's Friday, and I left Friday blank just in case, and yeah, just as well I did. So,
Yeah, good.
yeah.
There's always two. Is it Universal Standard Time? That's supposed to be the universal one, but I have never gone by that.
Yeah,
That seems to make it even more difficult.
no, I think that's Greenwich, the old Greenwich, but
Oh, probably.
I think, yeah,
I'm sure.
I don't know.
I'm sure someone watching this is a time history buff and would know exactly when. Yeah, I don't know the history of that, but I'm sure that's.
They can.
I'm
write
sure
to
there's
both
some
of us.
fantasy book that touches it too.
Right.
So Pete, I'm glad you joined me. I like, and this is just something new I've started across the realms and just talking to other authors. I'm sure it'll expand a little bit, but it's been nice to get to talk to other authors, and I'm really excited to talk to you. I think you have a really just kind of interesting life just from what I know about you from your writing and just some interests. And so I'm excited to learn more about you. But the thing that really kind of got me wanting to talk to you is I just finished Last Among Equals, sorry. And Jeff Brown cover stands out, right?
Yeah.
Did he do your other covers as well? I know you have some science fiction books, or is this the first one that you went with him?
The first one I went with, and and you're probably the same. Very glad that I did. I just had a book. We just
100%.
had a book fair in Melbourne where I live, and that cover kept drawing people over to my table from we had a big bookstore, one of the big chain bookstores across from us, and it was bringing people across from them to
Yeah.
us. So yeah, it's
Book covers, I tell you what, I definitely judge a book by its cover. I know you're not supposed to, but I don't know. There's just something about it that draws me in, and this captured that fantasy feel. And I kind of experienced the same thing. I only have one book published, and it's
Yeah.
through Jeff Brown doing the cover. And I think with me not really having any connections or knowing anyone in the fantasy industry or sphere, that really helped a lot. Just people, noticing, oh, that's a Jeff Brown cover. There's something legitimate there. So a cover, I think, really goes a long
Oh,
way.
100%, and I don't mind holding it up for people.
There we go. Thank you.
But
a little shout out for me.
but what he's done for both of us is he isn't that other. And look, I work with some amazing artists on my other book, so this is not demeaning them at all. But sometimes designers can say, "What do you want on the cover?" And the author doesn't know really. We might have an idea, but we're not visual artists. We're writers.
Right.
Oops, lost my pen. He just kept drilling. I'm not sure he did the same with you. He kept drilling down until he found a kind of motif and a scene that encapsulated the mood as well as the characterizations of the story. And he's spot on. That's that character. That's the mood of the book.
Yeah.
He's amazing. So
100%. Yeah, it was interesting working with him because you're right. I didn't know what to expect, and so I came to the table with this vision in my head. And kind of what's on my cover, I would say, is 80% my idea. But then, honestly, for the second book, I gave him maybe a little bit less vague. I kind of threw out a scene to him and a picture I was thinking of. But he actually incorporated something, believe it or not, that made me kind of change how I wanted to write something in my book. So I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh, I actually like that better. And I think that would fit better in my world. So that was really interesting to see. Kind of let him take his creative process a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think he is help. I mean, those artists are helping us visualize the world. And I had a book. Where is it? I don't know if it's sitting. No, it's not up there. It's a little book, and I had a different cover for the Kickstarter version, and then I decided no, it needs to be branded more with the rest of my sci-fi. So I got the same cover designer to redesign it, and he changed the shape of the sort of starfighters that are on the cover. So
Gotcha.
It was very different. So I went back in and rewrote the scenes that featured those. Same thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
He's actually created much better starfighters than I had in the original version. So yeah, let's go with that. And I changed the name and everything based on the design that he'd come up with. So yeah.
That's what's fun too about being, at least in my opinion, of course I'm biased, but self-published, where we have that freedom to go and get what illustrator we want and either to say yay or nay and have that convergence of creativity there, wanting to do that versus handing it off to a company or someone and saying I hope for the best, Yeah,
and I've had down the traditional publishing route. I've had some interesting experiences with that, where they. The characters aren't the characters that you drew. And in fact, again, this is probably going to sound like I'm disrespecting the publisher that I went with. I'm not. I love them.
Yeah, understood.
Myself and another co-writer had some books, and we both had female characters, and we had not, I hope it's okay to use the word sexualized those characters at all. The covers really did. And it was a bit of a disappointment. I love working with that publisher for lots of other reasons, and I highly respect them. The cover art, and it's been a problem bringing that to conventions because, I can see people's expression when they look at it and go, they do the little, ooh.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It conveys something where maybe that's a specific genre, or it conveys a feeling that, brings in a certain readership group. Yeah. And if the story itself isn't catered to that, then people are going to read the first chapter and think, oh, this is not what I was expecting.
Not what I wanted. Yeah. Which, circling back to Jeff Brown, he's the master of appealing to exactly the right reader for you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm amazed at how much he like how many books he does in a year. I don't know how he does it. He's so fast and he does it so good. But anyway, this isn't a Jeff Brown podcast, but I always just like to give a really good shout out to him. He just does such a good job. So Last Among Equals, it's the first book I read by you. I actually do plan on going back and reading some of your sci-fi books.
Oh, thank you.
I'm definitely more big into fantasy. It's just, it's my bread and butter. It's what I enjoy, what I like, and what I'm familiar with. But if it's, a really well-written science fiction novel, I'll read that as well. And after reading your fantasy novel, I really liked your prose, how you told the story, the characters. So I know I'll like the science fiction that you've written.
Oh, thank you.
But before we get into kind of Last Among Equals, and I'm not going to spoil anything in the book, why don't you just kind of give a little history? Because you've written a lot of books. So maybe a little history of kind of where your writing started, the science fiction you've written. I know you've kind of written some standalone novels, and getting to, I think this might be your first kind of hard epic fantasy novel. I could be wrong there, but
No, spot on. Yeah, exactly.
good.
I think the journey's been like it is for most writers. You kind of, if you don't start publishing young, which I didn't, I was 51 when my first book came out.
Oh wow.
So, and I know I don't look it, I only look 30, right?
I was like, you look 40. If you look like in your 40s, you're going backwards in time.
Thanks, man.
That's how Australia works.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, and all that harsh sunshine's actually good for us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Makeup does a lot of a lot of wonders. I was a kid during the 70s. I was a teenager in the late 70s, early 80s, and writing, science fiction, fantasy were my escapes, and horror were my escapes, and my great passions as a kid and as a nerdy kid. So, and I think I was pretty, you either are creative or you're not. It doesn't mean that if you're not creative, you can't write it at all. It's
right.
I think the difference is the creative impulse kind of sometimes takes control, or impels you to do certain things. So I think that creative impulse was always there from childhood. Always dreamed of having, my name on the spine of a book, having my book in a bookshop, seeing my book in a bookshop, which has just happened 2 months ago.
That's awesome.
Which is amazing.
That's so cool.
And really grateful for that sort of dream coming true. Those little kind of moments. But then, life goes where life goes. Being in Australia during, as a young adult in the 80s and then the 90s, you both had the pressures of life kind of taking you in the direction that it wants to take you, but also the other, dreams and ambitions and goals that you have. And then family comes along and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
As well as the fact that for Australians during that period, it was pretty tough to get a conversation with a publisher. And there was no such thing as self-publishing. Oh, well, there was, but it was kind of vanity press. Yeah.
Do you know why that is? I'm an American. I know nothing about like Australian history and what's happened. So is there a particular reason, just, whether it was something specific to the country or fantasy in general, that it was kind of difficult at that time?
It's 100% the geographical isolation. So, things like when the initial Star Wars movie came out in 77, it came out 6 months later here than it did in the US.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it came out, again, it was like a Christmas movie here.
Yeah.
Because it's summer in Christmas here, right? So it's summer blockbuster.
Right.
But even with that 6 month, delay, we didn't know anything about it. We'd just seen some trailers, and a few TV ads. So there'd been no spoilers because there was just that complete disconnection from the rest of the world. So that as well made it hard. If you wanted to communicate with someone in the US or the UK, in terms of a publisher or an agent, you would either have to fork out a lot of money to jump on a plane and try and attend, some kind of pitching session and just hope it worked out. And that could be, even back in the 80s or 90s, that could be five grand, which you can triple in terms of its value now.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So even to pick up the phone, write a letter, there's no such thing as email till late in that kind of journey. So it was just difficult. And it was only really in the early noughties that there was the opportunity to start communicating online, and that geographical barrier sort of collapsed a bit, which has been great. So when I turned 40, I decided, both the kind of technological time was there. There was the opportunity to have conversations and build relationships globally, and I kind of went, well, I'm 40.
Right.
This is not going to happen by itself. So what am I going to do? Yeah. So then began the process of learning to write, learning that I wasn't as good a writer as I thought I was in the beginning, hiring a writing coach, publishing some short stories, getting feedback from editors, joining a couple of writing groups and starting to sort of, knock off the rough edges, the kind of iron sharpening iron principle going on there. So, and then eventually, had some interest from publishers, but not enough, and agents, but not enough to kind of get me across the line, and eventually kind of went, well, I'm good enough that they're telling me honestly, I'm good enough, so why don't I try some self-publishing? And yeah, like you were just saying, I don't regret that at all. That's
Awesome.
been a great journey. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. When was the first book that you published? Well, I guess what book was it? When was that?
So that was 2017,
Okay. Yep.
and that was a werewolf thriller. So it
Nice.
was a standalone one-off. I'll never do
Yep.
another one. I mean,
Never another werewolf one or another standalone one.
oh no, there's lots of standalones. In fact, I prefer writing standalones, but you can't get
Gotcha.
away with that all the time, unless you're
Right.
Stephen King or someone like that, or John Grisham.
Yes.
Yeah, it was more that I just had that. There were several stories that were on the go, and there were several completed manuscripts that had been doing the rounds of agents and publishers, and that was the one I felt was most ready to go. And I got some mentoring from. It's not a horror novel, I would say it's a thriller, but I got some mentoring from our local Horror Writers Association that helped kind of polish it a little bit better. And then yeah, just felt I was ready to go with that. So I kind of got it off my chest, helped me test the waters a little bit in terms and get my head around how self-publishing works. You really are running your own publishing company,
Yeah.
and I didn't
Yeah.
realize that until I was probably 2 books in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of similar experience in a way where I thought I had all my, eggs lined up and everything was good and ready to go. And then, 4 months before launch, I thought, oh man, I got to do this and I got to do this, and I got to do that. And then you get into it, it's just more and more and more. So
And
it's definitely a lot more than what you bargained for.
it's all on you too.
Yeah, it's all on you. Yeah, if something slips, you can't point the finger at anyone else, and it's just you.
That's it.
It's I kind of obviously I wasn't as old as you when I published my first book. I was how old am I now? 33. So I was 33 when I got Breaking published. But kind of the same experience where I wasn't someone who like completed a book in like my teenage years or early 20s and then kept writing more and finishing more books and more books. I started several stories and got through them all, wrote a couple different things, and it was more kind of like a cluster of here and there before I finally decided to write a book. But did you complete, like, are there any unpublished complete Pete Aldin books out there that are just like shelved away?
There's 2, and
Okay.
but I, like you, I never finished anything until. So when I turned 40, like I had lots of. I like the way you described that. I had lots of ideas and started manuscripts, sort of clogging up floppy disks and
Yeah.
and paper files.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you have those still?
Yes, I do actually. And
Maybe somewhere.
Yeah, I was recently looking for something to put them in, and I couldn't find anything. I need to go looking on eBay a lot more. Yeah,
Right.
because there's probably stuff on there I've forgotten about that might be salvageable. So that's a good reminder.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see what's on there.
Yeah. Yes, I've got a couple of. So I've got one that's a fantasy that I'll. It was the second manuscript that I finished back in about 2011. It's a bit undefinable because I'm trying to kind of backwrite it at the moment to fit it in with The Last Among Equal World, just a different part of that world. But it actually,
okay.
It's more of a murder mystery that follows a priest as the central.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he's kind of he's riffing on a Catholic priest. So it's a form of
Gotcha.
Catholicism that just
Yep.
made it simpler for me to write the religion and explore some legitimate religious themes that I was going through at the time as well. But it's a tough one to niche. So it might be something that I have to go back to and rewrite from scratch. I'm pretty happy with it. I like the arc of the character is good, but the world building might need a little bit, and some of the writing might need some trimming down. So it's probably way too long.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and just needs trimming back. The other one is, once again, it's really hard to define. I'm shopping that one around publishers because I think,
Oh, cool.
yeah, if I try and publish it at the moment, it'll distract people from the fantasy and the sci-fi. Just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
who's this
gotcha.
writer? What does he write? If I try and put that in with the rest of it at the moment, it'll be like, oh,
Right.
that's a bit weird.
I like the variety that you have from your standalones. I haven't read them all. I've just read Last Among Equals just from your telling me from them. It's funny because I have a big interest in a lot of different things. I like a good story, whether it's horror or sci-fi or thriller. As long as it's well told, it's good. I enjoy it. So I always try to think of different elements to blend in like my books. Like my first 5 books I'm writing are standalone, and I want to try to have some type of different element thrown in there that's not quite fantasy, but still have it kind of fantasy at its core. Sounds like that you just have a love interest too in a few different things that you just enjoy a good story.
You're talking my language, yeah. So those 5 books, are they in the same universe or are they in different universes?
Yes, yeah, they'll be in the same universe, and eventually, I'm sure it'll all kind of come together. But you can read them each as a standalone.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that for my first 5 books, just because someone, there's a lot of people that haven't read my book 1, and they might stumble upon me when book 4 comes out, and I don't want them to have to, risk reading book 1 and trying to get through it. They could pick it up wherever along the line and kind of read them in any order. So that was my way of thinking, anyway.
No, I like that. And as a reader, I know a lot of people love a series and they love at least a trilogy to get their teeth into, but I'm much more, I like to kind of what we call cherry pick, I like that idea from that author, I like that idea from that author.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
read a
absolutely.
book, good, next book.
Yeah, there is something really satisfying about a standalone. I mean, if I had to pick one or the other, I do prefer series. There's just something kind of epic about it. But it is great being able to pick up a book, read it, close it, and have a really good, satisfying ending, and just enjoy a book for what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And you get exposure to a lot of different authors and different ideas that way too. And I
Very
love
true.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, the time investment too. You can, rather than love Robert Jordan, but rather than reading 14 books, that's the same story more or less.
Yeah.
You can read 14 different authors and get 14 different perspectives.
Yeah.
So definitely a big bonus there. Last Among Equals, we can finally get into that a little bit. Again, I won't do any spoilers because that's not the time or place for that. But I really enjoyed it. So I'm really bad with names. I'm good with faces. Sometimes can really forget the names, but the characters in the book, you have, and I might pronounce them wrong, but Eric, is it Uli?
Yes. Yep.
Uli, Prej,
Yep. Well
and
done.
Freya.
So many people think Frey. So
Oh, really? Okay,
well
good.
done,
I got it right. Good. I read it through the whole thing. And then Freya.
Yep.
And then a bunch of other cast members. And then I went, not bad guys, that's not the word. The kind of the antagonistic race in the world, the Trell, are kind of like these lizard-like creatures. Humanoid, though, smart, intelligent, and some pretty horrific things that they can do that they have done to kind of the area, to ravage the area. There's a mixture of a lot of different things here. There's some kind of prophetic elements to it in the story about where the story might go, and I like that because it's a good way to kind of foreshadow where the story might lead, but also, open up to some surprises. Oh, but one of the things that I really liked about your book is it's pretty common now, and I like it. It's how I want to do some of my books, but you kind of start with a few different character storylines. And in my mind, I thought, okay, probably at the very end of this book, or maybe even future books, if this is a series, they'll end up kind of coming together. But I kind of like that each character instead almost had their kind of mini introduction by themselves for the first 20% of the book or so. And then they kind of came together relatively quickly. And I thought you did a really good job at that point, even though it was still early in the book. I thought I had a really good understanding and feeling of the characters, what they've been through, kind of their motivations, where they're going. And I don't know, it felt like I was excited. It was almost like I was opening up a gift. Like I was ready for the rest of the story to go through with them together. So I want to compliment you. I think that setup at the beginning was just a very excellent job for both the story and the characters.
Thanks so much, mate. That's it, it's a risky one because some people go, oh, it's another story. And then they get to the third character point of view, oh, it's another story. Whereas, yeah, I prefer those kind of epic stories where you do have lots of strands coming together.
And throughout the book too, I think you managed swapping between characters really well. Like there's some chapters where, especially towards the end, when the just naturally, kind of the scene picks up and it gets a little bit more exciting. You're switching back and forth between the characters quite quickly, but it never felt like you were repeating a scene or just kind of dragging it on. I felt like almost like watching a movie in a way where it shows one character doing this and one doing that, and you're kind of at the edge of your seat waiting to see what happens. So yeah, it was a very easy read in that I think like I read it quite a bit in just 2 or 3 full sittings, and it was very easy for me to do that just because I think it flowed very smoothly.
That's been the most surprising feedback I've had, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised by it, but it's actually quite a long book. It's 107,000 words for the word nerds out there, which is
Okay.
That's in a trade paperback. That's 440 pages long or so, and people are reading. Someone bought it on Saturday at the book fair, came back to me on Sunday at the book fair and said, "So I'm in the middle of chapter 11, and I just want to know, did you invent a con language for the the Elargian?" I'm like, "You're in chapter 11? What?" And then the next day, she posted a review on the Monday. I was like, "How did you read it so quickly?"
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I think that's been really great to hear that it's that easy to read. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing too, and again, just something that's kind of encouraged to do, and I think you handled it well, and I tried to do it in Breaking, my first book as well, is balancing the world building aspects of the world while also sticking to the actual story. And that's hard to do, especially like I can tell, your world is, has a lot of stuff going on into it. There's a nice rich magic, history there. There's a lot of kind of regional or confrontations between the people of the North region and the South. I don't know how to pronounce it. What'd you say? Alohans?
Yeah.
Alohans?
Yep, spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all right, perfect. And then was it Cardelians?
Cardelians.
I know I botched that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cardelians. So, anyway, there's a lot going on, but I always felt that you sprinkled in enough information where I knew, okay, this is, here's the dynamic here, and I'm okay moving on with the story now. I don't need to, like, there was no questions left hanging. And that's always a challenge. At least it was a challenge for me, is trying to balance what should the readers know?
Yep.
What do they want to know? What do they need to know? And what should I just cut and not let them see?
Every new book project, I go through the same thing, exactly the same questions. Like, it never gets easier. Sorry to tell you that.
Oh boy, it's the life I chose.
Yeah, it is, exactly. But I think it's a healthy thing to go through every time, because you do. Yeah, it's just part of the craft. You just have to work through and this is where having writing groups, and sometimes, like, that book had several editors, so it had a lot of other eyes on it before it got close to publication. So in the early days, I wrote a really bad form of that version of that for NaNoWriMo back in 2011, and
Wow.
when I started to work that into a full manuscript, I had writers like Kevin Eikenberry, who's a military sci-fi writer, great author, Beth C. Cato, who's a wonderful fantasy and horror writer, and also writes nonfiction as well. Best-selling author. So they were in their early days as well, and the feedback I received from them was fantastic, particularly around that question. You don't need this paragraph of someone explaining something to somebody else. You don't need to write a paragraph of you telling the audience, where this thing came from.
Yeah.
It just comes through. And I'll compliment you. This right from the beginning of Breaking, I knew enough of what kind of world I was in to just relax. And then through the action, then we found out more about the barrier. We found out, there's people on the other side of that. So you just layered that in where it needed to be, which was great. So there was no kind of upfront, everybody, you need to know this and you need to know this.
Yeah, and it's funny because I appreciate the compliment. That, again, just another tough thing where like my first draft compared to this final one just looks so different. A lot just from the world building perspective, where I just knew it would get bogged down if I didn't chip away this and chip away that. Yeah. And there was a story I won't say the name of it, but there was a story I was reading a bit ago, and I really, really enjoy. I actually think it would have been a good book, but it was bogged down by that heavy world building, and it disappointed me because I actually like the world, and like I think that there's something really rich there, but the story just got bogged down. It didn't get traction because of that, and I really feel bad by that, because I could definitely see myself doing that in certain aspects of my book too, where I'm sure, someone reading can see portions here that I've done that. I know that when I like reread portions of my book or like when I'm going through editing, it's such an easy thing to do because you have a love for your world, right? And it's so easy to put it down on paper.
Yeah. And you think, and we think so much is important that might be important, but you could leave it till later. So one of the best bits of advice I was given early on, I've always tried to practice this, is to save some character backstory till later in the book. So rather than, sometimes you watch a movie or you read a book or it's a TV series and straight away you're confronted with the character's backstory and you're like, oh, I'm not really interested in this. Like, it doesn't hook me.
Who is this person?
Yeah, it doesn't hook me. And I think rather than, and then you read another one or you watch another one and you're thinking, why are they so jaded?
Yes.
Why does this particular thing keep pushing their buttons? Why are they fixated on that? And it's not answered until 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the story, and you're ready for it then. But by that stage, you've gotten into the plot, and you need a bit of a break from the plot. So that's where there's a good opportunity to kind of go through that backstory.
You want to get invested in the characters for who they are, and then it just makes those emotional beats hit even harder. There was one person, again, no spoilers, but one character in your book where it was in the last maybe chapter or second to last chapter where there was kind of a revelation, and it just kind of made me understand that character a little bit better and really appreciate, again, just kind of that delay. It's the payoff in the end that matters. Yeah, obviously you want the whole book to be good. You want to you want everything to be set up just the way you want it to. But with that ending can be really satisfying, then that's what matters in the end.
Yeah, 100%. So on that topic, I'm reading an Octavia Butler book at the moment, or trying to, and I'm really struggling. Like, I'll read 2 or 3 pages and I have to put this down. And someone asked me why the other day, and I thought I'd got through 100 pages, and I looked at it and I've got through 48 pages.
Oh, wow.
But when they asked me why are you struggling with it, I said, oh, I know what it is. It feels like it started 100 pages too early. So it's like her writing is magnificent. Her prose is beautiful. Her characterization is wonderful. But it's boring because I'm like, but when does the story start? Like, nothing's really happening yet. This is all backstory, and I'm just not that interested. So I'm tempted to go to page 100 or 100
just see what's happening.
See if anything actually gets going. Yeah. So anyway,
I guess that's a tricky part too. Just come to think of it, is where you actually do start your story, right? Because just looking at your book, my book, I guess any book, you could start it, 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, 2 or 3 weeks after. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different places where you can say, okay, here's the actual start. And where you start is weird because all these characters have this history already. They have their backgrounds. The story has really already been going on, unless you're Rand from the Wheel of Time and you just get thrown right from the beginning of this thing. But it's just an interesting decision as an author to say, okay, here's where the story begins and here's where I'm going to end this story at this point.
Well, even Wheel of Time starts with about 50 pages of young people kind of hanging out in their life. Yeah. And it's kind of fortunate that he's very Tolkien-esque in that you're interested. It's just the way that he writes about that you're interested, but nothing really happens. It's tougher to sell that these days, I think, to start that little bit earlier. Yeah.
That's tough to sell, and at the same time, I'd love to see another book that almost took its time to that extent, but have it be good. But you're right, it's tough to do that. Yeah. You really have to just, I don't know, have that special magic that obviously he and Tolkien had like at their fingertips and were ready to go. Something special. So
going back to that Octavia Butler book, which was written in the 90s, I wonder if I'd read it 30 years ago, whether I would have been fine with it. How much of it is me kind of acclimating to that now, quick, get into the plot kind of culture that we've got, that short attention span. And I need to be hooked quickly because I've got other... I've got streaming I can go to. I've got 50 books on my shelf I could pick up. And how much is the craft? So, it's interesting. I don't know. But I'm like you. There are some writers that, like Stephen King, he's got a book called Lisey's Story. It must be 500 pages long. And the story kind of starts about page 200.
It takes a while then.
Yeah, it's just, you can see him kind of, as a discovery writer, just feeling his way. And you can kind of see the light go on at about page 200, and he goes, oh, that's what the story is. Okay,
that's funny. Yeah.
because it's Stephen King, there's something about his writing that I'll go, A, I trust him to take me somewhere with this, and B, this is kind of fun anyway. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So I don't know why. I give him a pass on that, but I might not give another writer a pass.
Yeah, it's Stephen King. I guess we can give him a pass.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, the attention span thing is kind of fascinating. On the one hand, so I'm really thankful for Brandon Sanderson for writing the long books he does. And I know that's not for everyone, but it forces people to be patient. Now, I do think Brandon, maybe more so than some other authors who have written epics, maybe not quite that long, but very long. I think Brandon does sprinkle in quite a bit more action scenes in his book than maybe some other ones did. Yeah. But at the same time, he still demands that you be patient to see that ending and see the payoff. And I just think, I don't know, I see the chain of events where you have like kind of Lord of the Rings kind of really influencing an era, especially with the movies. Like that came out when I was 9. Obviously, you were older, but I think for everyone who loved fantasy, that inspired something in us, and that just kind of kept on going to Brandon and to others. And I don't know, if 10, 15 years ago, I was thinking, man, I wonder with movies, with technology, if these epic fantasies will end up, just being dead. But I think kind of the opposite. I just see this huge surge of it. Now, granted, there will be people who aren't patient enough to open up a large book, and that's okay. But I think Brandon Sanderson has kind of proved that there is a huge interest of people that want those big scale stories, and they want to get invested in that.
It's a really good point, Al. So I hadn't thought of that actually, and yeah, our hat should be off to him for helping people to expand their attention spans. me included,
absolutely.
Me included.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so easy to just, whether it's like, I don't know, TV or, if you're scrolling on social media or whatever it is, it's so easy to just shut your brain off and just, go by.
We have so much choice. Again, one of the benefits of age is being able to look back to that kind of pre-digital time and say, well, there weren't really that many books coming out. There weren't that many movies coming out. In Australia, in the 80s particularly, we had 5 television channels. That was it.
Wow.
Now, and that's free-to-air channels. Now we've got 30-something free-to-air and all of the streaming services. You've just so many ebooks coming out all the time, and you can take 1,000 ebooks with you on your Kindle wherever you go on holidays. If you're not really, and I'm terrible. I'll read 10 or 12 books at the same time.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
I
can maybe do 2 or 3 at a time at the most.
I'm so bad, and I'll read a chapter and go, that was a good chapter, but what was happening in that other book?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
the other book.
I gotta actually thank you and all of Australia for giving us Bluey. That is like our kids' favorite, and that's a great family show. Wonderful things from Australia. But
can I ask you on Bluey? Sorry, how do you handle the accent on that? Is it just interesting? Or is it...
Yeah, I'm pretty good with like accents, understanding it, and I enjoy it. Yeah. I will say. My kids, especially like my daughter, she started to say words in an Australian accent, and it was very funny to see that because she was maybe 2 or 3 years old when she started watching it, so just easily can pick up saying things.
That's so funny, and
that's fun.
That's payback to America for making the rest of it. Speak
for all the influences, right? That is interesting, though. I guess we're maybe kind of backtracking, but just kind of thinking about it, you're right. Like before. Say pre 2000, but especially like pre 1990. I can see how just kind of Australia is there all by itself. If you don't have that internet and it's snail mail, really snail mail, like I could see how that you're an island and you're an island.
Yeah.
Must have been just a very you must have. I don't know, the experience you've had of kind of seeing the gap close significantly just must be quite an experience for you.
It is an interesting thing, and it's been a good thing, like for us, a really good thing, because I often think of it as we're at the bottom of a gravity well that's hard to, it's hard to get out of, but it's also, people are a little bit disinclined. So we'll go through kind of periods where musicians and, comedians and Broadway shows and that sort of thing won't come here because it's just so costly just to get everything here and everyone here. And then, prices are a little bit higher here because all the stuff that we import costs more.
Yeah, very true.
Et cetera. But that gap has closed a lot. And it's something I'm very grateful for in the internet age is having terrific friendships around the world with people I've never met in person. Some of whom I have, but, particularly Americans and English and Europeans. who I count as really, really good friends, but I've never sat in a room across the table from them.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, look at this. I was just thinking when we first started, how cool it is that as I'm speaking, you can hear me from all the way around the world. Just, I don't think that'll ever get old to me. How unique of a time we live
It's
in.
magic.
It's very cool. Yeah, it is. We're living in our own magical universe. So back to Last Among Equals. I mean, I think it's safe to say that there's going to be more books coming in this. Just how the book left off, but I don't know if you have any comments on that, or like what you're kind of planning for the future, or if it's all hush hush for now.
Well, it was an experiment. So it was a book that, and you've read the little afterword in the back. So it had 3 publishers interested in it at various periods, and that never worked out for various reasons. But that always kind of gave me the confidence that this is a decent book. So when but I've tried to focus on sci-fi the last few years, which is where I've had the most material. And I kind of published this, because I just felt like it was languishing, and because my wife kept saying, when are you going to publish that book? It's my favourite book you've written.
Right.
And, she's always right. And because I wanted to test the waters a little bit with it. So I'll come back to your question in a second. What's been fascinating to me is the difference in the community around fantasy as a genre than the communities around sci-fi and horror. In particular, there's nothing wrong with those other communities. I don't think they're there as much as they are as the fantasy community. It's a very broad and interconnected and positive culture amongst fantasy readers and fantasy watchers and fantasy game players. That's just been a joy to kind of come into. It's been coming into a party that you were like, I didn't even know this party was happening, and B, I wonder what these people are like and if they'll accept me, and just finding that they're just a great bunch of people to hang around with. So the response has been really warm.
That's been my experience as well. Kind of the same thing. Just, I didn't really come onto the scene until I announced my book was coming out last July. I just never really got involved. And I just kind of came into it thinking, okay, whatever people think of me or my book, I'm just happy that I wrote what I wanted to write. Yeah. But you're right, just the response from everyone, like everyone's just excited that people are writing fantasy and people love fantasy. And you're right, it's just a great fantasy community.
And I think the love of the book as an artifact, the fact that you've produced right from the get-go, the really lovely hardcover with beautiful art, interior as well as exterior. This is what I'm learning the hard way. So I did a Kickstarter for Last Among Equals, and thinking with my business brain, which is not a good part of my brain, I should have done a lot better. And I really left money on the table because I didn't do the hardcover. I didn't make enough hardcovers and offer enough of them. I didn't realise how important that is to people in that community. So, it's just a lovely community who value everything from the words to the look of the book. As we began by talking about, the artwork's always important to them. Just been great. So what I very soon realized was, no, I need to write sequels and I need to explore this world a bit. So fortunately, I've got the beginnings of several novels that have been languishing in files for years.
Yeah, right.
So I'm kind of trying to reverse engineer them to fit the world. At the same time, working on 2 sequels to round this out into a trilogy. So there'll be two other books will come out this year, which are standalones in the world, and then early next year I'll have the sequels ready to.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm definitely I'm interested in the world, so I'll probably end up reading all those standalones. That'll be a fun.
So maybe you'll find this interesting, and maybe you won't. Maybe this will be disappointing. But what you were saying about the world building with Last Among Equals earlier, I only kind of had enough world building with that novel to write the story. So I didn't really know where the magic came from. I didn't really know where I won't spoil it, but the character that comes in towards the end, the big character, where that character came from. I just kind of wrote enough to have a story that had beginning, middle, and end, and hopefully was satisfying to people. When I started to think, well, I've got to write sequels, that was when I realised, oh boy, I better get this world building fleshed out. So one of the books I finished, it'll come out on Kickstarter hopefully in April, is set 1400 years earlier. And specifically, I wrote it just to get the world building straight. I'm really happy with the story that came through, and it is a standalone story, one character point of view. So you're not having to jump into other the characters. But
Yeah.
it helped me. It's now informing the sequel, so it's helping me kind of decide on certain things, and
That's cool.
yeah, so it's been really useful
That
to do.
that's one thing that surprised me that I really enjoyed about writing. The just a aspect that I didn't expect was I kind of like when I was a teenager, even in my early 20s when I was still just very new at writing, thinking that I had to have everything all set in stone in order to write. And I'm still very much an architect. I plan out everything, but I realize that like there's a lot of stuff in this book breaking that I purposely leave kind of open because I don't even know myself,
Yeah.
but I know that I can cover that later, which was a really weird thing to discover that just because I don't know it now doesn't mean that the book's ruined or I can't tie it in later, but it opens up even more opportunity for me to discover on my own what the world is like. So that was a really fascinating thing for me to just kind of discover in my writing.
Did you find that liberating in a way?
I did, because like I said, I'm very much, and I like how I am. My mind's very structured, and you kind of mentioned the business mind. That's how my mind's geared, but I also have that creative side. So when I'm structuring my books, I outline very detailed. So when I sit down to write, I know what it is. But then when I come across those parts of inspiration, or I'm a little bit kind of unsure, it is a little bit liberating to know I can leave that there, and that'll be something for me to tackle later on. And you're right, it was freeing more than it's stressful, and I thought it'd be the other way around. So I was very happy to discover that.
It was one of the things I had to learn the hard way. Just the frustration of, oh, I don't know what to do, with this scene, or I don't know what to do with this character, or whatever it is, and then getting stuck on that point. This is back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and not wasting time, because I think anything you do contributes to your development and to the story, but I could have produced a lot more quickly if I'd just done that. If I'd said, well, you know what, I can either come back later in the drafting process and, return to that, which is what I do now, or I can just let it go. And if there's a second book, I'll figure it out in the second book,
Yeah, 100%, no big deal.
Yeah.
Do you, one of the things that I'm still kind of struggling to get over, but I've also kind of accepted it too, is I haven't read my first book in a while because I'm sick of it. I'll pick it up later on down the road. But like we're kind of reading through the final drafts and like knowing that it's done, I just kept seeing areas where I knew I could have done better. But then I had to keep telling myself, it's your first book. Like you have to put it, you have to put it to rest at some point. Yeah. And I think it's going to be with every book. Like I know 20 years from now, I'm going to be looking back at my 5th book or 10th book and saying, oh man, I could have done that better. And that's just such a weird thing where, that maybe a book you could have done something a little bit differently to make this aspect a little bit more intriguing or interesting or just, better written. But at some point you just have to say it's done and, shake your hands and call it good.
Yeah, 100%. And the negative way to look at that is to look at how much stuff out there that isn't that great, and people still like it, right? Yeah. So people really, put Twilight down, and I haven't read it. I've only read some of the passages that people complain about in it. Yeah. But she did something right, and I think part of that rightness and part of the publisher's rightness was saying, no, this is good enough, for the audience that we intended for. This is good enough. And you could look at that and say, well, that's, they really weren't respecting their audience. But I don't think so. I think they just went, no, we know what this story is, what this book is. Mm-hmm. This is fine. And they didn't get hung up on it,
And I think you're right. And I think, like, especially, like, for me, like, and the more you write, the better you get just naturally. But at some point, you just have to be content with, it's a good story or it's an okay story. It's good for what it is. Whatever level it is, you wrote a book. If you like it, other people are going to like it. If your close readers like it, other people will. And that's good enough. Kind of like what you said. That's, why does it need to be anything more than that?
And it's the way I worded that sounds like I'm saying, No,
I didn't get how you get it.
But I think sometimes it's a beautiful work of art, but even a painting, that artist could come back a month later and want to just dabble.
Just a little bit more.
Look at George Lucas messing with his own original trilogy over again. And he made a mess of it, of something that was fine the way it was. All the mistakes in it were beautiful. They were part of, all the lack of CGI was a great thing. It's what made it feel gritty and real.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
And looking at what was I going to say? Oh, I always, one of my goals with every book that I write is by the end of it, I want my reader to just feel something from it. And to me, that's what I'm kind of looking for. I don't care if someone closes my book and says, "Wow, that was a phenomenal book," or "That's one of my favorite books." I'd love it if someone closes my book cover and says, "Oh, that was interesting, and that really, kind of made me feel this way. That was really good," or even like, "That was good." I just want someone to feel something when they read my book, and to me,
Yeah.
that's what all I'm looking for.
Yeah, if you can achieve that, you've done
Then
something
you're good.
wonderful. Yeah,
You've done it. You're right. Hopefully.
yeah.
All right, Pete. I got hopefully some fun questions for you.
Great.
We'll see. So, your website lists some of your favorite books. Two of them I've only read two of them. So, the Chronicles of Narnia, which is 7 books, but it's Chronicles of Narnia, and The Hiding Place. And it's interesting you listed that. I know a lot of people have read that, but I read it in high school, and I found it interesting that you listed that. That was a very, I think, well constructed story. Telling she wrote it herself, and I don't know. That was just a really great book and interesting choice from your part.
It is, and because it's funny because a lot of autobiographies have kind of been deconstructed, and particularly Christian autobiographies like Mike Warnke from the 70s, 80s, 90s, who ostensibly touted himself as an ex-satanic priest, and it was all made up, it was all invented.
Oh,
That's been proven.
yeah.
Whereas nobody's ever debunked Ten Boom's work. Nobody's ever said no, that bit didn't happen. Like you can trust the facts of the story, and the story's not only interesting to me because it's amazing that the way she has taken a period of her life and kind of imposed a plot over it, so that it does read really well as a
It
story.
does, yes.
Like she did a really good job, and she writes beautifully too. But knowing that it's real, and I think so many stories end in either an easy solution or, and I'm the worst at this. Violence is the solution to the story. That's the genre we write. But sometimes I think I'd love to write a book where I don't solve everything with violence at the end of it. So the third Spider-Man movie with Toby ends with forgiveness, and I remember watching that movie for the first time, thinking, oh, this is awful. Oh, this is awful. And then getting to that moment where he forgives Sandman, I think it is, and being blown away that's how they resolved the battle between those two characters. Beautiful. And Ten Boom has that same moment where later in her life, I think it's in the 70s, she comes across one of her former Nazi guards, and he goes and asks her for forgiveness. And again, rather than there just being a kind of Hollywood schmaltzy moment of, sure, give me a hug, she really wrestles with it. And the honesty of that but the fact that she works through that towards forgiveness. We need more
One of those
stories
things
like
where, yeah, because it's one of those things where we could obviously never relate to that experience, but at the same time, she made it relatable where you could put yourself in her shoes and feel it. What a wonderful thing stories can do that.
She's a gift. So even just as a writer, she's amazing. Yeah, I agree.
Do you know if she wrote anything else aside from like her autobiography there? I didn't explore anything outside
She
of
wrote
that.
a lot. So she wrote a lot of Christian devotional
Okay. Yep.
pieces. She had more of her own story as well. I think I read some of that as a teenager. I can't remember
Yep.
any of that. But yeah, she's got quite a few titles out there. Or
Gotcha.
she had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And the other book, again, Chronicles of Narnia, I haven't read those since I don't know, I was probably 10 or 11 or 12. I was really young. I really need to read them again. But I was excited. I'm always hesitant about like movie series or TV series and movies coming out. But I did think it interesting. I don't know if you saw, but Netflix's adaptation is starting with The Magician's Nephew, which
Oh, really?
I thought was really cool. Yeah, because I don't know. To me, that seems like maybe the last one that they'd want to dive in. But they're deciding to, at least as long as my sources are correct, which my source is Google. So anyway, I'm intrigued to see, how they do it.
That's brilliant. I'm so excited they're rebooting that as a franchise because Disney were doing a terrific job with that. And I'm one of the first people to be down on Disney for what they've done to
Yes,
lots of
yeah,
other
yeah.
franchises, but that franchise, they really brought it to life. So I'm excited to see what they do. That's exciting that they're starting. That's possibly maybe my second favourite book in the series. I really like
Oh
that book.
wow,
Yeah,
it's a good one.
it's
Yeah, because
brilliant.
I was obviously just familiar with. I think I watched the movie first, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That came out like what 2001 or something,
Something like
2002,
that. Yeah, yeah.
something around there. I was only 8, 9, or 10 years old, whatever that is. So I think I naturally read that story first, then probably the Horse and His Boy, but then
Yeah.
I read The Magician's Nephew, and I think that story I liked the best. I want to say.
Yeah.
What story was your favorite? Do you have a favorite there? You said that was kind of your
I think The
first.
Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe would be the favourite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was one of those stories that growing up as a kid, Dad would read to us over and
Oh
over.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and the illustrations in that edition of the book were pretty great. Like they really. So there was, and it was. Lewis is such an interesting writer. I wouldn't say he's one of the great writers in terms of fiction. He's not a.
I actually agree with that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
not a
agree
great
with you
writer,
there.
but
Yeah.
his ideas, and he really worked some horror in with the fantasy,
He
in
did a
both that
great
and
job.
Caspian in particular, and didn't kind of pull any punches. And I remember as a kid being quite scared of, particularly the stone table scene and the death of Aslan, the murder of Aslan, really. It's such a
I think the movie
horrific
handled
thing.
that well too.
Yeah. But then when you kind of stand back from it a few decades later and look at it as a work of art, you're like, that's brilliant because, I mean, it is telling the story of, the gospel story anyway, but the way he's, worked that as a fantasy story, you have that moment of horror that you imagine the people, around the life of Christ were
Yes,
feeling
absolutely.
that loss of hope. This is just completely awful. To suddenly, oh, what, Aslan's back,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and you actually
Yeah,
feel that sense of victory and relief. Yeah,
that is really interesting. He obviously that story, it's very much on the nose and off the nose. It's right there in your face, but it's still I love it every time. Every
yeah,
time I watch the movies or read the books, it's yeah, he's done a phenomenal job capturing that feeling, that moment.
yeah, yeah.
You like board games. I saw that on your website. Do you have time for board games? And two, when you do play board games, what is kind of your go-to?
Oh, it's a good question. One of my problems is that I have some memory issues. So every time I'm
Gotcha.
playing a board game, it's like I'm starting from scratch.
Gotcha.
Like,
Yes.
how does this work again? What do you do here? I've joined. There's a local group, a couple of guys locally that we just catch up at a time that works out for all of us every 2 weeks, and we play, and then occasionally play with my
Yes.
son. So my boys are way bigger board gamers and
Oh, really? Yeah.
role players than I am, than I'll ever be, which is lovely. So we do get to kind of do some family time around board games as well. Favorite at the moment is and see, I can never remember the name of the style of game, but it's kind of a worker assignment game called Ceres. So it's based on one of the big asteroids, or one of the dwarf planets out in the asteroid belt. So it's an asteroid mining game. But
Okay.
once you've got the board set out with one or two of the expansions, it kind of covers the entire dining
Yeah,
room.
yeah.
It's huge.
Right.
And every turn takes, an hour. But I
Right.
love that, being able to just immerse yourself in something and think about all the little nuances and details.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just great. So
Like what you said, even if you forget how to play a game, it's funny how after like 30 minutes or so of getting into it, your mind it does get transported into like its different world where you're only focused on the rules of the game and what needs to happen, and it's kind of amazing our brain can work like that.
yeah, and it's very therapeutic, I think, too. So it's
I agreed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
As
taking
long
you
as there's
out
no
of-
family fighting, right? As long as that doesn't happen, then you're good to go,
Right.
depending on the game, right?
Yeah.
I always tell
Fortunately,
my
again, my
wife-
family are great at that stuff, so there's never any
Well, that's
fighting.
good.
Yeah.
I have a ton of board games, and just with with work, with writing, with my kids, my daughter's 6, my son's 3. We're just in the thick of busyness of life, and I just keep telling my wife that I'm just raising like a board game army. Like when my kids get to be 12 years old, then we'll have board game nights. But right now, I'll just have to keep storing up my collection and just waiting.
Do it, because
Yeah.
it'll work, and it's such a good way to spend time together. And it's there's no kind of authority dynamic anymore, even when the kids are teenagers or whatever. That it's a level playing field. Literally, you're
Absolutely.
playing a game against each other. So yeah, and sometimes the kids are better than we are, and you're like, okay,
Yeah, and that's when you kind of flip over the board game, right? Maybe.
100%.
Do you? I don't think we've really touched too much on movies. I'm a big movie guy, and it's funny. I forget who. I guess there's some truth to it. Like I've heard writers say, stop watching movies, stop watching, television series, and grab a book if that's what if you're going to write, then read. And I do agree with that. But at the same time, I there's a set of movies that I just love to watch because I feel like they just hit that emotional, I don't know, gong within me where it inspires me and makes me want get ideas for writing. I don't know if I don't know, that's kind of growing on, my little route, but do you like movies? Are there some movies that you really enjoy, some movies you don't, or is something TV kind of something you don't really watch too much?
No, I do. I probably watch it too much. I think stories are what's interesting. So live theatre, I love. Movies, I love. I prefer a movie to a television series, mainly because of that attention span thing. And I'd rather have the story kind of compressed into a manageable 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
16 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
Having said that, I've watched Breaking Bad, I don't know, 20, 30 times. I've watched the entire 10 seasons of Stargate and the movies, at least 6 or 7 times. And I'm about to start that one again. So there are some things that I'll dive into because of that. I'm familiar with this. I love this. And like anybody, there are movies that are kind of go-tos for me that, I'll watch them again and again and again, and I'll be in the mood for that. And some of them surprise me, like Collateral with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise. I don't know why I like that. Would easily be one of my top 10 movies.
Really, yeah.
There's something about it that as soon as it comes on, or as soon as I see it, the thumbnail, I want to watch that from beginning to end. And my wife will kind of go, "Oh well, tell me."
Oh boy, again.
Yeah,
that's funny. Certain stories could just hit us like that. And I'm glad you brought up Breaking Bad. I was late to the party with that. I think my wife and I watched that 3 years ago, and to this day I can't stop thinking about it. I just find myself just what a well constructed character, the story. I mean, I don't think there'll ever be a more perfect show than that one was. I wish I could erase my memory from it and go back and rewatch it for the first time.
I agree with you. It's my favorite show. Nothing will ever knock it off the top spot. It's brilliant. And I was late to it as well. I started watching it on DVD just as the last season was coming out. And I remember someone saying to me, "Oh, I'm so jealous of you that you're getting to watch every one of these episodes for the first time." Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard from a good buddy of mine too. He just kept saying, "Man, I'm so jealous. First time." I feel bad for the people that watched it from the beginning though, because I don't know how you could wait between some of those episodes to get from one to the other. That would just be torturous, I think.
Some of those season cliffhangers.
so bad.
I just had to go out and buy the next season straight away so I could watch it on DVD.
Absolutely. Yeah. I got 2 more questions for you. Maybe I kind of misread or took what your website was saying, but it says that you like Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah. I love Brussels sprouts.
Yeah,
that's
what people complain.
That and broccoli are my go-to vegetables. I don't know. They never get old for me. So I kind of laughed when I saw that.
And it's always, and honestly, so I used to run training courses all over the country, and they would be 4-day courses. And so you had 30 minutes to get that room of people on side. Quite often they were people with mental health issues or they were unemployed people. And about half the room was always there because they'd been told to be there, or they would have their benefits suspended or whatever, their unemployment benefits. So you had to win them over very quickly. So one of the initial things was favourite food, blah, 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 blah. Go around the room, and Brussels sprouts always came up as I hate that.
right.
So we would always kind of spend the entire week making jokes about Brussels sprouts. But
That's funny.
I'm surprised that so many people hate on them because I think it's the way you cook them. So I will often use them as a substitute for onion. And sorry, we're doing a cooking show now. But
yeah, that's fine. I like cooking. I like food.
Chop them finely and fry them up to kind of give that base flavour, to that tart flavour to the whatever dish it is you're cooking. And
Interesting. I've never done it like that before, but I am next time I eat Brussels sprouts, I'm going to try it that way because that
Try it.
sounds
Yeah.
like it would work very well.
Yeah.
One more question. I didn't intend on asking this, but just because you're from Australia and Christian religious background as well. Do you know? Familiar with the Newsboys band?
Yes, yes.
So they
One
were
of my favourite
they were
bands in
like
the 90s, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they were like the band that like because yeah, I started listening to them when I was like 10, probably around 12 or so. Yeah, around 12, so 2004ish. And like I still go back and listen to like all their like old albums. They're just I don't know, they're phenomenal.
They're
They were just so good.
very good songwriters. Yeah. Very, very
Yeah,
good.
excellent song. That's why I appreciate like I love music and I tend to steer away from I don't know, like I always think it's kind of silly when people like buy songs and they sing it from other writers. I get it, but I really enjoy when, musicians write their own music, fully because it's their creativity and I feel like that just makes it so much more special.
Yeah, it's coming out of their own heart. It's their artwork. That was the thing I think I appreciated about them. After the 80s and early 90s, having a lot of music that was, and I was very involved in my church at that stage, and so having music that kind of, like any of us, music that expresses what's going on in your own head and your own heart is really important. But I couldn't find any that was edgy, that had an edge, but it was also really well polished and well, like the crafting of it was good. It was all very kind of close but no cigar.
Yeah, right.
Whereas those guys just like they knew their genre. They knew how to produce. They were great musicians and great singers.
Yes.
It was just fantastic stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah, they were so great. I heard them for the first time, probably about as far away from Australia as you can get. I'm from Maine, which is northeast part of the country,
Yeah.
and I listened to them in our small town in Augusta, Maine. So probably as
wow.
far away from home as they've ever been, but
Yeah.
that was just really cool. Yeah, for the first time.
And particularly because in the beginning we looked upon them as Queenslanders. So they're like
Oh, okay.
the kind of most bush,
Gotcha.
people you can get. So the style of music was really strange for where they came from.
That's funny.
Like looking at it from the outside, it wasn't.
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
but yeah, that's funny. And I've nearly been to Maine. I got as north as Salem in Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. Nice.
My wife and I were in New England for about a week and a half several years ago, and it was
That's
in
cool.
summer too, so
Yeah.
the weather was beautiful. It's just a lovely part of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great spot. We live in North Carolina now, and I love North Carolina, but I don't know, like Maine's kind of still like my home, my home place. I love it up there. It's great.
Yeah. We were actually thinking, how can we kind of live here for a year, just to
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Great.
And we're hoping at some point, my family's kind of scattered around. My wife's is close to us, but she has family up in Maine too. So we're hoping to have some type of synergistic relationship with Maine and here, where we can move back and forth as we want. So that's the dream, anyway.
What would so if you drove in a car
Yeah.
from Maine to where you are, that'd be what, 12 hours or more?
More. It's about, if we didn't have kids, if I could just kind of drive straight through without stopping too much, about 16 hours, 16 to 17 hours.
It's a fair way.
About 16.
Yeah. Yeah.
Assuming, but then up the eastern seaboard of the United States, you got New York, Boston, and Washington D.C. So, depending on traffic, that can really make or break it.
Yeah. There's a lot
What part of Australia are you from?
So Melbourne, so bottom right-hand corner.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I always wanted to visit there and New Zealand. I don't know, I just wanted to visit both. Have you ever been to New Zealand before, or is there something between Australia and New Zealand that's I don't know, maybe some rough blood there? I don't know the dynamics if there are any.
Oh no, it's a very combative relationship in a fun way. Like we kind of
Gotcha. That's cool.
what's the word? I'm trying to think of what the American term is, but we give each other a lot of stick. We'd say, but we're
Gotcha.
like cousins, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And sense of humor is mutually compatible. They're very sarcastic. We're very sarcastic.
Awesome.
Lovely people. Most of New Zealand lives in Australia.
Okay.
Where maybe people from Mexico. Maybe it's not a good analogy, but people from Mexico might come to the US. or to Canada to kind of level up.
Okay.
People from New Zealand,
Gotcha.
there's more opportunity in Australia. Even though we think,
Interesting.
why don't you just go to Europe or
Yeah,
the US?
right.
They'll come here instead. Big
A
place.
little bit easier of a trip, I guess.
Yeah.
Isn't it Tasmania? Is that the island off the south coast
Yeah.
of Australia?
So
One of my favorite shows to watch is Alone, and they did one season where they filmed it in Tasmania. I don't know if you're familiar with the show.
they did. Yeah. And
Yeah, and so that was really just cool. I like that whole show anyway, but that was really cool to watch.
So Tasmania is my favourite part in the world. I actually set a zombie apocalypse in Tasmania 9 years
That'd be a
ago.
good spot for one.
It's perfect.
Isolated island. Yeah, that's a perfect spot for
And
it.
because I thought, well, I need to research this a little bit because I wanted to make the countryside one of the characters kind of thing. We spent lots and lots of time down there driving around, and it's just beautiful. So if you come into Australia, I would say skip Melbourne. There's nothing to do in Melbourne. Right?
Well, we could see Pete if we came to Melbourne, right?
or,
Melbourne.
or I could meet you in Tasmania.
Very true. Very true. That's
Because
an option.
Tasmania, that small island, has every ecosystem from the rest of the country except for desert. So you'll drive on one side of the road, you'll have pine forest. The other side will be like a rainforest. It's bizarre.
Gotcha.
It's beautiful. But so if you went there and then went to Western Australia, then you've seen the whole gamut of the continent. Yeah.
Interesting. Is there anything really to see in the middle of Australia, or should you just fly from the eastern seaboard to the western and skip
Yeah.
everything in the middle?
Yeah, you
skip
go to
yeah.
go to Perth and do some of the. So Perth is the capital city in Western Australia. It's about 20% from the bottom of that side of the country. So there's lots of things. So it's hot there, and you've got desert within a half-hour drive north. But then you've got the much more kind of bushland south of it,
Gotcha.
and west and east of it. Up that coast and just inland a little bit. There's a lot of things to do around there. So yeah.
I didn't realize until recently, and I forget why I was reading about it. It was some type of facts about it, but there's an island like way north and west of Australia that's part of Australia. I forget the name of it, but I don't know. But it was like, it surprised me. I thought, oh, I didn't even know this is part of Australia. It's way far off the coast. But anyway, fascinating area. I'd love to come down and visit at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot to see, but you have to go big distances to see it all.
Yeah, gotcha. I'd have to take off at least a few weeks to get it all in.
Yeah, and then you would have a great time. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, Pete, I appreciate the conversation. I had a blast talking to you and getting to know you. And again, Last Among Equals, I really liked it. Looking forward to all the other books in your world here and all your other, standalone novels. I'm looking forward to getting to your sci-fi books as well. So I have a lot to enjoy of everything that you've written.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, appreciate that very much. Great talking to you.
Absolutely. Have a good one. See ya.
Cheers.